So today I'm going to take you on a grand journey of how to build the Scottish Twins out of a triang Dealey 3F, which is what the Reverend Audrey did for his as well, given that Bachman was, 50 years off creating theirs at the time he made his. So looking at some old school techniques, I'm going to show you how I mostly paint my models, but there is a little bit on the build process as well for deconstructing the Dealey 3F. But if I'm honest, I was experimenting so much I didn't film a lot of what I did for the build process. It just would have become too many hours of footage to sort through, so I didn't film it. But please enjoy this mostly painting tutorial. So we're starting our journey with a mostly unmodified Dealey 3F from Triang. Now you'll note two things have occurred here, quite obviously. One, the wheels are out of this tender, I'll get there in a second. Two, the wheels have been swapped out on this body. Now, this mechanism rocks. I love these Triang things. They work really, really well. The only problem is the wheels that come with them are way too coarse for operations on my layout and any other layout using a modern track system. So what I've done is I had a spare chassis from this 80s, mid-90s era, which has these, I guess, less coarse but still quite coarse wheels. And I have taken it out. I don't feel too bad. That chassis didn't work properly. There was something off with its motor. I could replace it, but you know, this body fits this, so I'm going to keep it. What I had to do was swap out the axle. So on these Triang things, it doesn't drop out. You have to punch out the center axle using, and what I do is I've got some nails or bits of 2mm wide brass rod or something, and you set it up in a piece of wood, but I don't think I have my piece of wood anymore. Anyway, you hammer it out, separate them, take them out, and then you've got to put in the existing wheels with their axles. Well, the axles that come with the Triang body, these are way too thick for the newer style wheels. And you can see it the other way around. Here's an axle from the original, from this wheel set. And you can see if I put it in here, free spinning baby, that thing is tiny. So you've got to make sure that the axles that were with these wheels go with them as well. Middle one I didn't pull out because it's flangeless, so it doesn't actually affect the performance at all. And I couldn't seem to punch out this gear without damaging the whole chassis, so I just left it in there, but I will repaint that. The other bit is that this tender had the wheels that are definitely not going to fit, so I've got this 3D construction. This was originally meant to be like a whole motor assembly for inside one of these Dealey tenders, but it didn't quite work out. So what I've instead done is the guy who built this for me gave these little brass bushings in here, and I've soldered some wire onto those brass bushings so that and you know, on this side, or is it this wheel is picking up power here because that's not insulated. On the other axle it's this wheel, and those bushings are taking the power from the axle, which is connected to one wheel only. So we've got effectively one complete pickup on this whole tender bogie. This will drop into the tender. It doesn't on that one because that's not the one I'd done it for originally. You can see here that the pinpoints hold it into the right place in the tender frame. Free rolling enough. That's an extra set of pickups that will wire into this. Now, next part is what we do with the body. So the plan is retain the safety valves, cut off the firebox, cut off the cab. We're gonna need to fill in the splashes, and we're just gonna have to reconstruct a whole bunch of stuff. We're gonna keep the main, front of it, most of the main structure. Let's just get on with it, huh? I'll show you then with the tender. I'll just either scratch build a new body for this or cut off the top bit and work around it. We'll see how that goes, but this is far too wide for a Caledonian 812, so let's get on with it. Alright, first step here is that I am going to put the guy in my jig, and we're going to saw down, take off that firebox. So I sawed into that. I'm now getting the Dremel to remove the last little bits of that, and off it comes all in one. I'm then going to clean up those edges using a knife. Usually I use a modelling knife for this, but I just had one of these big old Stanley knife things hanging around the garage. Take down the edges so that we're just left with the clean splashes.
next, because the cab on the 812 is not as wide as it is on the 3F, I'm just going to cut off this last like 1.5 mil of space, because I want it to be, I think 29 mil wide is what I went for in the end. Sanding down the edges so we have a straight edge. And now the next part is the new firebox section. So I've measured out using the vernier how deep that needs to be. I'm going to put it in the clamp, which is a new thing for me, and I love my clamp. And then saw off the piece that I need. And give it a bit of sand, make sure the edges are clean. Very nice. Once that has been sawed off, I'm then going to make 2 cuts down along the sides of it to leave room for the motor in between and get a file out so that we can give those a nice point to them so that they kind of come down straight from the sides. And because I need more room for the motor under here, I'm also going to use the Dremel just to get a bit of that plastic off the top. Breathe in the microplastics. Now, next step, the face of this thing looks different. So the 3F face is got all these little bolts and bits on it. We're going to take those off because we need to have a smoother smokebox door. Just using a knife to get in there around all the details, taking your time to scratch all this plastic off in the right way. And you can see the marks from sandpaper where I've sanded down, and here I am going at it again.
We're most of the way through making this thing, so what have we done? Made a cab end. I've got another version of this I attempted that was too big and didn't quite work out. These cab sides, I had to go at making a few of them up just to get the sizing right. It's 1/2 mil thick plastic card here, and there is another notch on the other side so it sits properly in the triangle chassis. You can see under here that I had to take some material out of the PVC pipe to make it fit onto the body. We've got little bits, a lot of this white detail is 0.5 mil plastic card, so there's really thin stuff here that connects and makes the shape of a Donald or Douglas. And we've covered up all of the splashes as well because we didn't want that ridge on there, and I wanted them to be the same width as the cab. You'll notice that the cab windows aren't exactly even, but I am all right with that. It is fine by me. So the next step is to make the roof, fill it, sand it, paint it, and then add all my extra details like handrails, whistles, things like that. Actually, I've got to add the safety valve. I have to do that before I putty it up. Anyway, that's that.
Alright, and here we are after the next few steps with some important details. So we have the roof here. This is made with 0.5 mil sheets of plastic card that were bent around a jar that I had filled with boiling water to set the shape, and then some of the details on top of the roof, that distinctive Caledonian sort of ridging made with just some strips of plastic card you can see there. On the front, we've got the smoke box dart, which is new here. So this is made from we've got 2 bits of plastic card rod there that have been connected to a circle of 1 mil thick plastic card that I cut using a drill to get the inside diameter and then just a knife to make the shape of it, which is quite difficult. The next bit of detail that I've put on here is the safety valves. So that is just 2 bits of 1 mil plastic card stacked on top of each other and sanded down until the edges were really, really rounded, with a bit of cutting as well to help get there. But that was a bit of process and a bit of time. Then we get to the tender. Now, this thing is all made of plastic card construction, measured up. It's mostly this, the white card is 1/2 mil thick on the outside with the 1 mil thick on the inside. The reason for all of this doubling up as well is that I made it so that the 1 mil on the inside, the structural part, sits on top of the lip of the tender and the lip of the cab, and then the 1/2 mil thick stuff on the outside is just the shell, the aesthetic shell. Now, the measurements from all this came from some printed pictures of Caledonian 812s, which I kept around and helped me to determine the measurements I was going for. Alright, now for everybody's least favorite part, which is filling and sanding. I hate this because it never works out how you want it to. I'm using just some cardboard here to get the filler into the lip, and no, this did take me like 5 goes over just filling, sanding, back and forth. It's a patient game to make sure all those holes are filled up. Essentially, you do it once, you go, that's still not right. You go again, you go, it's still not right. This was mostly right. Still wasn't perfect. You can see the smoke box dart fell out when I was sanding stuff up. It looks smooth enough, but once you get the next layer of paint on, you'll notice a few differences, and I had to go back and redo it. This here is the boiler band, so where the PVC pipe attaches onto the boiler is right where the boiler band is, so I've made another one using some strip of plastic card that I cut out, and I'm just going to glue that on there. And despite the fact that I've actually done the filling and sanding quite well, this really helps to sell the illusion of the join. In fact, coming back to this video after having completed it and have the model in my hand for a little while now, I'm at disbelief that that line is actually there. It doesn't even come across at all. This here, we're making another step for the cap, because the model I bought off eBay didn't have that step. It was broken off by the previous owner at some point. So this isn't, I guess, a necessary step, but it is something I had to do. So I've replicated the shape using 1 mil thick plastic card, and I've put this video in here because I didn't put in a lot of other actual modeling video into this. This video is mostly going to be about painting models. You can see there, just cutting it until we get the right shape. You don't really have to be perfect with all this stuff, you just have to get it right eventually. Now I'm cutting into the spare bits of 1 mil plastic card to get the steps themselves, which I will glue on to the ladder frame. Would you call that a ladder frame? I don't know. The step frame, whatever it is. And it's using some non-plastic things to push that into place so that I don't get glue all over my fingers and muck up the rest of the plastic, because this glue is like plastic melting. That's how it works. Yep, so on it goes. That looks about right. Now I've got the model all primed and ready to show you. So you can see that all of my filling and sanding ended up being worth it. There's very few lines and gaps and things we can see from the vertical part to the PVC pipe to form that bottom slope of the firebox. That was the hardest bit to really fill up. But you can see here, I mean, it's not perfect, but it doesn't matter so much once you got the painting and the weathering on. So it's close enough. The tender has had a little bit of modification since last time. I took some bits off of the 3F tender I had, including the door to the coal right there, looking at it right now, I don't know what to call that, the water filler cap at the back of the tender, and the coal load is just some gravel that I've glued into place on there. So now that is, what's that little hair? Get rid of that. So now this has all come together, we can paint it finally, which is really what I captured most for this video, was my painting process. So you can see I brush paint everything just because I can't be bothered with the faff of airbrushing everything. I mean, I know you get the first layer on easier, and this is probably the part of the process where I'm wishing I did have an airbrush. But, for the rest of it, I don't need that. So we go through first layer of paint. You don't have to be too careful about where it ends up, because you're going to be putting other layers of paint in different places. Just get that thing blue. Using AK paints here, which is similar to like Vallejo paints, they're all wargaming paints. Use a few coats, usually 3 for the blue, just to really make it set. So that's over a few days, you'll get this first coat on. Then I'm masking off the vertical upright bits here so that I can paint the foot plate black. So always when you're doing painting, you start from the lightest colors and then go to your darker colors, because you can't really paint over black with blue, but you can paint over blue with black. So I've already painted the running boards red by this point, and I didn't need to mask anything up to do that, because if I got red overspill onto the running plate, it wouldn't matter. Black is going on top. Now we're using the black. I'm moving the brush from the center of the loco outwards, which is if there is a problem with the way that I've masked up the red part of the running board. If you move it out, and see here, the part we haven't masked, if you move it out, you're not going to get black paint on the downwards vertical part. So moving out along that plate from the inside. Now that I've got all that black and the smoke box, I'm coming to paint the dart. You can see I've got a very small little brush out here. I think this is a 4/0 size brush, a Vallejo brush. This one's new. I bought them just for this because my other one was kind of falling apart. And you can see that it really improves the look of this to make it silver. Just noting though that the human eye, you're not going to catch all of the imperfections when you look into here. So I've covered up the black with silver from everything that I can see from any perspective I'll ever see this loco. But the whole thing doesn't have to be perfectly covered; it just has to be convincing enough. You can see here to get those hinges for the smoke box as well. If you approach it lightly and just come up to where the thing is raised, you can pretty easily only color in that without masking around it. Same goes for the rod of the hinge itself. With this black, so there's a red boiler band right behind the smoke box door. I put blue over the edge of the smoke box, and now I'm coming back with a bit of masking tape to get the black back to the edge there. So now we shouldn't have any like grey gaps in here, if that makes sense. It was blue before, now I've covered it over in black properly. No gaps now, so when we apply the red it should be easier. And now this is masking for the boiler band, so just showing you the process of getting that tape over there. I use Tamiya 6mm tape. Nothing sticks like Tamiya. They're not paying me to say this, it's just the only masking tape I've used in models that actually works, so take my recommendation. I do this quite a lot. So you have to take a bit of time to get it perfectly over the band, a few back and forths, a few more bits of tape. I'm using this little bit of plastic, which is an offcut from the tender, to stick the tape down. We're also going to mask up the tender. So I choose to, when I'm painting models like this, go about and mask as many areas that I can as possible. So anything that's not really mutually exclusive to mask up, like corner bits and all that, just all the different straight lines I can possibly mask up at once, and go through and do all that painting at once, and then move on to the next sections of line. You can see here it's a process to get this stuff on straight and in the right place, but you just have a bit of patience, bit of back and forth on where you place the tape, just to make it nice and perfect. It's lucky most trains use some straight lines, hey? Now that's all done, we can begin the painting. So going 4x speed for all the painting parts, just because I'm very careful and meticulous and it will take a little while. You don't have to be all that careful though when you're painting between the lines of masking tape. Just give it a go, and you'll fix up the mistakes if there's anything later. Like if anything leaks through the masking tape, we'll come back to it. All right, all you have to do is just fill in the lines for the moment. I usually would put some kind of a stopgap at the end of my horizontal lines here, but I'm choosing not to because I couldn't be bothered, and we'll just estimate where the line should end and we can fix it up later. Now for this I always do 2 coats of red over each of the bands. Now here we come over to where I was talking about before, where the smoke box joins the boiler. There's a band here. It's particularly difficult because there's all the detail on the smoke box, which means it's hard to get the tape down, plus whatever that like condenser or something is on the side of the smoke box. This was going to be a tricky place. You can see when it's tricky, I start by painting from the tape out towards the place I'm painting, so that I get a lot more paint on the tape and can then move the brush over onto the boiler band as I move forward, so that when I know where my brush is, I can then actually paint what I want to paint. And I'm going to use the same technique here. This is the hardest part too, where the cab joins the boiler or the firebox here. Same technique, starting by wetting the paint first and then painting out towards the subject. You can see I haven't seemed to got much red paint on the cab vertical wall for now, but we'll take off these tapes and I'll just leave you with the sound of all these coming off. It's magical. So you might have spotted a few mistakes here where the tape probably wasn't down hard enough, or it was just an odd surface, and now we're coming over with some blue to fix it up, to get rid of the overspill red. And this is always an option, and it's something you're going to have to do. If the line isn't perfect, you just go back and you fix it. It's not a big deal to screw up. There's always go back. You can see here, especially where there was filler and sanding, that the tape didn't stick down properly, so I'm just going to go back in there and clean up that edge, make it as straight as I can make it look. Because if it looks straight, then for all intents and purposes it is straight. Take bits off the wall there. Didn't get a lot of overspill on the wall. Pretty happy with that job. Next thing is the cab windows. So I've got some yellow paint now, and I think it's the only place where the yellow gets used outside the lettering and numbering. And we're just going to go around there. Again, you do it, and then if you screw it up, you go back with blue and you fix it. It's not that hard. This doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get it on there first, and then you can work with stuff. We can do iterations. That's what all this is. It's just iterations. And I'll need to do 2 layers of this as well. So I guess you increase the annoyance if you screw it up, but whatever. Just get it done. Now we're going through vertical lines, getting them painted up. Again, same sort of thing as before. Tape down, put the paint on, take it off, satisfying sound, job done. So yeah, I really want to include all the footage in here, didn't I? Ah, good. Now's the part where you just draw the rest of the owl. So freehand curves, I used to mask these in the past, and now I just can't be bothered. So I've got my nice new brush, and I am just very carefully at 4 times speed going through and drawing a curve. Now on this side, I'm not very happy with the curves that I end up drawing, and again, I'll show you that it's just about iteration. So line's about as thick as I want it. Now I'm going to come back when it's dry with some blue, and I'm going to get rid of all of the bits that are too thick or in the wrong place or just don't look right, and then it's going to look nice. And I will even come back over this again, although I don't show it with a bit of red there because I think I just undid some of the lining, like it got too thin. Next part is the splashes, coming over and again just carefully drawing a curve using my pinky on the model to keep my hand secure. I come in and I just draw the curve. Now this is something like, I don't know, I've all my life drawn and had a steady hand for this sort of thing. So I guess it's maybe a skill, just a skill thing, just a learnt technique to be able to trace out the line at a consistent distance from the edge. You might want to mask it, but I think it's a bit faffy. Then again, like we did on the other side, we're going to come through with the blue and we're going to fix up all of the lines and make them all even. Now I've killed the red there, made it too thin. Again, exact same place on the other side, which goes to show I'm consistent, if anything. And then watch my hair as it obstructs the view of me coming through with this blue paint and thinning out the line on the splasher where it is in the wrong place, and I'll have to re-thicken it. You can see on the left-hand side of the splasher, it's not quite right, so we'll come back to that. But just for the moment, thinning out all the lines there, and then here we are with the red paint. Coming through, I've fixed up that curve there, and I'm now with a painfully steady hand going to attempt to come through and go from the top of this curve down to the bottom. I'm mentally preparing myself, and look at that. Perfect. Alright, now for lettering and numbering. So I've measured out to the center of the tender here. I'm going to put a 9 on this side. You might have thought you figured it out by now. In fact, the elephant in the room is which character is this going to be, Donald or Douglas? I don't even think the answer is clear at this stage, even though I am drawing a 9 right in front of your face. There might be a deception still in here. So getting out the general shape of the 9, I'm then going to come through with the red and do the shadowing of the number. And you can see this looks bad, right? Like it's not right, but that's because we're not done yet. We have to keep coming back and forth and getting rid of overspill and all that. You see the red came in too strong, so here we are back with the yellow to get rid of it. And we're going to reassert the dominance of the yellow in the 9, and then I'm going to have to come back. I'm going to get some blue on there and get rid of some of our overspill and correct the curve up the top. And then I'm going to come back with the red, and I'm saying, you know what, nah, more red, bro. I need a little more red here. But because I've done a little bit of overspill there, we're going to have to come back with the yellow and fix up that little bit at the head of the 9, which I might have left if I was feeling lazy, but I don't feel lazy about this one because I'm filming it. So after I fix up the edges with the blue there, I'm going to come back with the yellow and see, there we go, we fix it. And now that's done. Now, what number are we drawing here? That's a 1. Does that look like a 9? I wouldn't think so. And we're drawing a 10. Zeros. That's really hard. I don't know how I'd never drawn a 0 before this point using paint, but that was incredibly difficult. And one next to it. So we have Donald on one side and Douglas on the other. So that's it. So this is a conjoined twin engine, perhaps, a 2-in-1 deal. Now we've got the same process here of just getting out the number. Because it's so thin here, I've had to go double coat with the yellow. But, it's not right. Again, it's never right on the first little go down, so I'm just going to correct some bits once I put the red shadowing under there. So I don't really know if I have to walk you through the rest of all this, but I did include the footage and edit it, so I am going to leave it in here showing, or perhaps just flexing on you all about how I can write numbers and letters in Paint on small models. You can see coming in with the blue, I'm going to fix the shape of some of these, and going to fix up how that one was looking because it was a bit wonky on the down, and the numbers were a little uneven. And I just keep, zooming out, looking again, picking up the paintbrush. All right, cool. Now we're on to the lettering. So NWR, I've spaced things pretty much exactly evenly in thirds across the space inside the lines of the tender, inside the red lines. I've masked out where I think the top and bottom of them should be, but as you can see here, once I get the N on the page, I kind of disagree with the top. I think it looks a little too tall, a little too close to the top, so I just ignore my own masking tape, which is something you can do. You can set your own rules and you can ignore your own rules. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Would you believe it? We are drawing out the letters in yellow on a blue background, and we are just going to iteratively make sure we don't screw this up. You'll notice sometimes that I put a bit of paint on the masking tape instead of on the model itself, and it's just, if you have too much paint on the brush, you're going to have a spillover event. It's going to be a big blotch right where you put it down. But if you don't have enough on there, you're just not going to get anything down. You're going to need too many layers of paint. It's not going to work out for you the same way it does if you have just the right amount of paint. So I get rid of a little bit of paint each time just to make sure I'm approaching the model with the correct amount. Now I had to get rid of that masking tape because I need to undershadow the bottom of the letters. You can see here, just careful hand getting the red onto the page, and again, not perfect. Overspill there, we'll fix it. Everything's fixable. The reason I do my W's like this instead of like the legs of the W going inwards is just because it's easier to paint like this. I thought it looked cool, but additionally, the first time I drew it was painting. So that's that. Just an upside down M. After all of the letters look good on their own, I'm going over with the blue just to make sure that they all end and start at the same point vertically, and that they've got nice square edges on them. And that's that. Those are the colours. So now it's all painted properly, we can seal it with some varnish. So this is Vallejo satin varnish, which is like halfway gloss, halfway matte. It's sort of a neither option, which I like for my models. Next part is weathering. So far out, isn't this a long little video? Because it takes a long time to make a model. So I've got artist pastels, I've shredded them down using a Stanley knife, and now I'm applying them with makeup brushes to the model. So on black, I'm doing white, 1, because ash dries white, 2, because white will mute the black. So it'll make it come out more grey, it'll look a little more worn. Now we're going to do black on the rest of the body, which will help to mute the blue. Now wherever it's just a little too much, I'm blowing it away just for the, little bit of breath like that. Because you don't want to cement in too much of it. Start out light, go heavier, and work your way from where that smoke is coming out of the funnel down along the model. Just getting, I guess, a little more faint each time. One thing, though, that is kind of important is trying to make sure that you gather dust in the gaps, which you might need a smaller brush to get it in there. I did have a bit of a muck up here, attempting to get some in. It went way too hard. I chose a brush that must have already had some black on it. Totally ruined it. So I've come back with a bit of water, which is great because we've clear coated the rest of the model. So a bit of water is going to take any of the actual paint off now. Now, I actually hated that end result so much that I decided to do it again. I repainted part of the model to get rid of the finish. I've now gone with a charcoal pastel, so a little less bite to it. And I'm just going to go and apply that across the boiler bands. This is where, I guess, that smoke and dust and soot would have gathered. And if this engine's being cleaned regularly, it's going to get in those bands there. No, I'm still doing the same sort of stuff, like blowing it off where it gets too heavy. But I'm just going over in some continuous layers with a little lighter color. To really sell this engine as, clean, but in a working condition. Then I'm going in all those sort of little crevices, lines and bits, and putting some more in there, and then wiping it away with a finger just to make sure that the colour is clean most of the way, just dirty in the crevices. Then I'm going up with some muddy brown sort of colour and using an ear cleaner to make some streaks in it downwards as if the rain's come and wash that away. And whilst it's it's still drying, using that. I'm then doing the same colour on the smoke box and front and sides, which makes it look a little bit dirty, a little rustish, but not insane. It just needs to look a little dirty, but well cleaned, well looked after locomotive. Then putting some more muddy colour wherever we're going to have hands and feet touching. And then we move on to the tender. So with this, I've gone on with the broader brush just to really get it on there. And I don't think I show it here, but I also come back and wipe off a lot of what I've done here, so that the number is clear and the lettering is clear, because in working railways, they would clean up that space specifically. And now it's time to paint the wheels. So because these things don't drop out of the chassis itself, I've gone in, cut a piece of paper with some slits so that we can fit the axles through it, and that paper will block off the body of the chassis when we start spray painting these wheels. I've then got some 6mm Tamiya masking tape, and I'm going and covering up the rims, and you might see me habitually get my little fingers in there and try and pry apart the masking tape like I am there, just to expose the whole surface of the rim. Once I've done that to all 3 rims and I've covered up the little crank pin insertion area with a bit of tape, I go around and tape everything up so that we're not going to spray any spray onto that chassis, we're just going to get the wheels. And then I come in with the Tamiya primer and we're spraying it on, and once I've done that I'll just check from a few different angles, make sure I've covered everything, flip back the masking tape a little just to see if I've got all that rim, and then it all comes to fruition. When that tape comes off, you can see I didn't quite pull the tape back enough on that center wheel. There's a little bit of space left, not masked, but that's fine. I mean, it'll live. Then I go and scratch off some of that excess primer that got onto the wheel tread and take a look around and see if there's nothing else there. Easy to scratch it off at this stage when it's just dried. Then we go to paint. So painting from the center outwards is the way to do it, just with your brush. And once you've got that surface covered, you then go in deeper, so getting the brush in between the spokes, outwards first to cover the outside tire of the wheel, and then brushing inwards next to get the center axle. And you really should do this with your worst looking brush, because this will screw up any brush you have, so make sure it's a bad one you don't want to keep. Then once we're done with this, we can go around and check the tread with a bit of cloth just to get the excess paint off the inside of the tread, and you can clean it up with, I don't know, some kind of degreaser or isopropyl alcohol later, but just make sure you don't take the paint off the front when you do that. It's a bit safer, just use some cloth. And then weathering, same technique as before. Pastels which have been scraped off with a knife and applied in, just being a bit careful not to be too heavy around any working parts. So the next step of this is finalizing the electrical connections. So I want to connect this tender pickup situation onto the main body, so I've soldered it onto this little connector pin, which I have the other side of the connector pin, and I'll be able to plug that in and solder it to a part on the main working chassis to connect this in a non-permanent way, so we can take the tender off and work on it separately. So on this other side of the pin with the long legs, I'm soldering the red connector onto the little power plate for the commutator, and the black leg of it is going to go under this screw so that it can give power straight to the chassis block itself, because these wheels on these drying mechs pick up power through the chassis on one side and through pickups on the other side. And once that's done, I've taped it all together so we can put the body on. And now it's time to put the whole thing together. So the tender drawbar connector goes into the tender via this nail that is glued into the inside of the body there, and that fits snugly on the tender chassis itself. I've then got to fiddle with the tapes to make sure these wires are in the correct position. Ask me how many takes it took for me to get this body on the first time. I will gladly show you this, where it takes me one very, very smooth take to first get the body into those pins at the back and then push the front of it down. Wow, wasn't that smooth? Ask me how frustrated I got. Next part is the screw. Trying decided that we should hold bodies on with screws in the side for whatever reason, so this was very annoying to do whilst the camera was rolling, but I will cut to the point where I just do it right about here. And then that's done. Put it together, put it on the track, and let's have a look at how he looks. So I'm really glad that I went and redid the weathering here. I think this is an excellent looking model. The tender hasn't quite sat on the chassis quite right. There's something with the spacing in there, but let's just enjoy the run and I'll fix that another time. Thanks for watching.